coffee machine. You have a tombstone with your name on it. That's not showing up, is it?
No. Oh, it's happening in your, like, yeah, it's in your background.
Oh. There we go.
Yeah.
Did I make that?
Yeah, you did this.
How did I make? Oh, whoa, we live. Here we go. Oh, and it showed up on my phone. It heard everything from coffee machine.
Okay.
So here we are. Hello, everybody.
Greetings, one and all.
Yes. Hello. What's going on? How's it going?
I'm doing well, and you?
Yeah, another day, another dime.
I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah.
So
let some people file in.
What's new in the world of e-readers?
Lots of stuff. I don't know. This morning, I think, I didn't catch it yet, but Huawei released their little press conference for the e-paper mate something or other. So that's going to be coming right around the corner, I believe. I think it's streamed at some point today. So, probably Mate Paper, I think it's called. Yeah, there it is. 10 hours ago, the spring 2022 launch of Huawei has a smart office launch, and it has a Paper Mate in there. It's a note taker. So that could be cool. That could be something. Huawei's never had e-paper products before. Xiaomi has, Hisense has, but not Huawei.
That's good. So, listen, everybody, we have like a new setup for the Good E-Reader Live. You might notice it. I believe we're streaming in 4K now, and in the past we used like Zoom for like our meetings. So as you noticed with like Zoom, the resolution of our like cameras were pretty crappy. They were, 720p, there was a big Zoom watermark there. Now we're shooting in 4K, and we're using OBS instead of Zoom. So, chat, let us know if like there's anything weird with our mics, if you could hear Peter and I okay. We tested this and stuff, but we never really tested it like in a live type of situation.
Correct. It's never actually gone live, but we are having some people file in. The usual suspects, Stephen Prosser and Courtney Bowman, have dropped by. And we also have Cisco Terez, who says, "How did I get here?" Question mark. I don't know how to take that. It's completely contextless. Are you having a rough night, or do you mean physically, how did you navigate over to our page? Well, we'd like to hear it either way.
How did I get here? Where am I going?
How did I get here? Yeah, I hope you clicked on, and we have our scheduling back, everybody, which means that anyone who's subscribed and has the bell icon, even myself, when it went live on the dot, I think 10:02, a couple minutes after, 5:02, sorry, Pacific, it pinged my phone. It went ba-bing, and it said live, and I clicked on it to double check the framing and everything. And yeah, it's looking like we're rocking and rolling again, and we have a bunch of people filing in. So Mike, we have some latest and greatest releases of some products. What has been happening? Who's in the spotlight right now?
Well, I think that in terms of probably the best release of this year is probably the Bigme Carve Color. Probably like at least the best thing that we've reviewed and has come out in 2022. But there's been there's been a whole lot of like interesting new things that have like come out, and there's like rumors of things coming out like as well. So,
right.
What have you reviewed lately that has been compelling for you?
Us here at the production La Studio we've been having our table meetings over the Bigme in the office, and everyone's like, this is important. And if you guys are confused as to why it's so important, is because color E ink, we're not talking about the first generation way back in 2009 with the Flepia. That doesn't count. We're talking about modern era, Nova 3 color, pocketbook color. That era of color, nothing's been touched in 11 months with color. Absolutely nothing. Except for Bigme. And everyone was skeptical at first. They're like, oh yeah, mainland Chinese company, ugh, yawn, what else is new? More clones and stuff. As they kept coming in, and Bigme's like, how about you guys review this one? Hey, Goody Reader, how about this one? Hey, do you guys want to talk about distribution terms? We're like, all right, well, these guys seem pretty serious, so let's hear them out. And we got some samples rolling in. The Bigme B1 Pro, the B1 Pro Plus, and now the Carve, and every iteration has subsequently been better and better than the previous one. And to their credit, the talk of the town and one of our most highest grossing videos ever was the Sony DPT panel that we saw at a trade show, and that was from the source. These guys are like, who wants our panel? Who wants our panel, basically? And Bigme picked it up. They're the only guys that actually took the initiative to get the panel that Sony themselves didn't even grab, and are making these units, and they're fantastic. And to this day, almost 2 years in, since 2020, Bigme is the only large screen color note-taking device you can buy. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, Bigme was kind of a surprise, I guess, because they're doing color with like their latest generation. I mean, they literally have 7 new devices that came out or coming out in 2022, and we only really talked about like the Carve color and like the Bigme B1 Pro Plus.
That's right. And there's a lot of stuff. There's and we can talk about all this because it's totally in the open, and we're gonna get our stuff soon. They have everything from a 7-inch all the way up to a 13.3. They have nearly 10 makes and models in their lineup. It's phenomenal, and that's more than anyone currently, I believe. Maybe Pocketbook has a couple muddled, overlapping 6 inches in their lineup that they're selling, but this is a full line of manufactured items built from the ground up, not white labeled. In fact, Bigme white labels their stuff out to other companies like Bokeen and other companies around the world who want to get into e-readers. And Bigme has a fighter brand called SmartBook, and they make color devices in different form factors. These guys are on fire right now. And most importantly, after the release of the first one, both Michael and the news publication, and myself and the production studio, we all just came together and were like, look, Bigme, you guys have something here. This is legitimate. The first couple units were good, but you're isolating the world without language options. They've pushed updates to us, asked us what we thought, English updates, and now all the firmware on all these units are English, and that changes the game. It really does.
Okay, Peter, you can't see this unless you're looking at the YouTube stream.
I'm not. Hold on. I got chat open, but I don't have. Let me pop it open. I do that not to slow things down,
Yeah, I'm hosting everything on my computer, and so just to give you a sense of where we're at, I've like pretty well edited OBS to like jack up streaming settings. Like I followed all these like online tutorials like on how to best like do it. But yeah, so unlike Zoom, we can't screen share, but with this, you can see that, Bigme has a ton of products. So you can see like the Pocket Note, the B1 Lite, the B1 Max, and the B1 Max Plus. So these are all black and white displays. So, you got something with a 7-inch and then a bunch of 10.3-inch screens. You can see like all like basically the resolution on all of like the 10.3s are like the same. PPI the same. Processors are a bit different. The Lite versus these. We have to really sort of dive deep into like what separates these. Because with our we're not going to have to, we can't review every one of these. You know what I mean?
No, that's impossible. We're not going to do full coverage on a team of 6 and your team of 7 on the news side and be like, okay, Mike, here's the B1 Max. All right, Mike, here's the B1 Max Plus. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, well,
we can't.
I mean, the compelling aspect of all these different devices are that they're English. So
they're all English. Yeah, don't take the spec sheet as any sort of a turnoff. These units are English. You go to the language options, you click your language, simplified Chinese, Chinese. Some of them have like Korean and stuff too. You click on it and it's now English. And I should mention, while we have everyone's attention really quick, the Carve Color has an SD card slot. I don't know how, I don't want to undersell that. An SD card slot, trans flash, TF for all you guys in Europe and Asia, almost nothing has an SD card slot anymore. I'm over exaggerating, but you know what I mean. It has an SD card. That's insanity.
Yeah, so basically, like, I think the most compelling products are like the two Kaleido 2 like displays,
I would say,
which are
right,
like the Carve Color and the B1 Pro Max. We didn't review that one, right?
No, we just actually finalized our distribution agreement with Bigme. We're not sponsored by Bigme. Bigme's not paying us to say this. We have a distribution agreement, which means we can now sell their products, like we have a Sony agreement, Fujitsu, etc. So as we are fulfilling orders and getting these in to ship to customers at the store branch of Goody Reader, we're also bringing in the samples, and coming up soon actually is going to be the Bigme X6, which is a monstrous brand new 13.3, and we haven't seen any 13.3s except for the Lumi 2 and the Quaderno, and that's it. I mean, there's like not even a handful of 13.3s right now.
Yeah, you're right. And I think 13.3s are an interesting product category because, for one, there isn't that many out there. And that's primarily just because of the price point. You know, most 13.3s aren't cheap, you know. And I think that's why, like, a lot of companies don't really target that segment because although there's very few on the market, it's a lot of people find it's critical with their workflow, with their business, or you know, I know a lot of companies like law firms and in the educational space that want 13.3s, you know, distributed amongst like either faculty or to students because it will read like A4 documents, which are basically the same size as a standard piece of paper, 8.5 by like 11.
That's the only, that's the only screen size that'll fit A4. 10.3s are A5. It will not fit a piece of paper. So if you're in the medical field and you actually need to look at someone's charts in its full form without cropping or any sort of clipped edges, the only thing is 13.3, and that's where they started. Law firms, medical institutions, production studios, way back in 2013.
Yeah, totally. So one thing that is pretty interesting that I found is I've been doing some research on Kaleido 3.
Oh, right. Yeah, you did an article there.
Yeah. So I know that we've been talking about like Bigme and their sort of devices and stuff like that, but we haven't really talked about like what other people's plans are, and you know, we can't really talk about what other people's plans are until we talk about Kaleido 3, which is like sort of the next generation of e-paper.
Right. Are you cueing me, or do you want to talk about it?
Yeah.
I can talk about it. Okay. Yeah. Well, you know, when we went to that trade show in Tokyo, and that's like from the guys that have and make Kaleido, they had Kaleido 2 versus Kaleido 2.5. And then we were like, whoa, what's this? Is this bridging into 3? And remember, we saw that sheet that we weren't allowed to show, but we were allowed to talk about, which is weird. Kaleido 3, and as you found out yourself, Michael, through your connections, that it was supposed to be released in the summer of last year, but it got delayed. That's correct, right?
Yeah, so why was it delayed? Well, it was primarily due to the pandemic. You know what I mean? Like the pandemic, I think, was crazier last year than it is sort of at the, first 2 months of this year. It's kind of like slowed down, like hospital cases have slowed down, the amount of people getting it, a lot of like things are easing up. But
that's right.
Early, like late, like, sort of like mid 2020, early 2021, E INK had planned to release this, but they really couldn't because, for one, there was an EPD shortage, because their largest factory in China was shut down for about the last like 12 months consecutively. And so, they couldn't go back to work. They couldn't manufacture enough EPDs at that factory. So they had to offset the manufacture of EPD displays, which is electronic paper displays, to Taiwan and to the US. So they sort of had to open up, they have one production line in each of those two countries, and they had to open up an additional one in order to meet demand. And so they finally have been able to like meet demand as of like a couple of months ago, like late November.
Right.
So now that they got the EPD situation sorted out, they have to get the factory in China going. But I think that they'll probably announce Kaleido 3 at SID Display Week, happening in San Jose in May. So that's generally like where they sort of, E INK is sort of like, one of the big sponsors of SID Display Week. So this is sort of like an annual event that talks about, the latest advances in screen technology. There's a lot of like, major players sort of that are like, that sort of like run it, like 3M, Corning, the people that make Gorilla Glass, Samsung Display, LG Display. There's like a bunch of other companies that are sort of in that space. But, so Kaleido 3 is sort of like the third generation of color E INK technology. We don't really know what's going into it yet, because everybody so I've talked to a number of companies in the e-reader space that have plans to release color e-readers, and they all said that it's probably going to happen sort of Q3, Q4 of 2022. So what's Q3, Peter?
Well, December, November, October. So then it would be July, August, September.
Okay, so
yeah, July, August.
So anytime between like July and like sort of the end of September is probably like when commercial products will be announced, pre-orders being taken, and then the final devices will be like announced later. So yeah, I mean, we really don't know what's going into the tech because E INK hasn't said anything about it yet. But what would you like to expect, Peter, from Kaleido 2 going into Kaleido 3? What do you see as the drawbacks, and what do you see as what E INK has to do?
That's a tough one, because right now it's not a problem. There's no problem with refresh, because remember, Color E INK uses the panel, the E INK panel at the bottom, and there's an array filter on top. So it was a myth that we actually busted, that people said color draws more battery and it makes the device slower. That's not true at all. It has nothing to do with anything, because the panel, if I can just show you with some scrap pieces of paper. Whoops. So here's an EPD, the panel of the electronic paper. They put a color filter on top of it like that. This doesn't draw power from the actual E INK screen, thus slowing it down. That's not what happens. So speed's not an issue, which was a lot of people's concerns. They're like, oh, color's slower. It's not. One of the concerns was that right now they weren't able to turn off the color array filter, which means the device uses color to create white. How do you create white from colors? Light blues, a little bit of pale green, some browns sprinkled in there. So the backgrounds always looked kind of stone blue with a little bit of gray. It was never a white experience like a paper white or anything like that. So that was the biggest thing, is that the color background, when you look at the black text, you're like, okay, black text. You look at the background, you know, a millimeter to the right, and you're like, that's pretty gray and dull. So there's three things they really have to work on, in my opinion, is the overall resolution, because as you have dug into the depths of the e-reader world, Mike, you'll know that e-ink resolution on color is like 112 max, which is nothing. It's really small. They need to up the resolution. They need to de-gray the background for a better contrast. And I was going to say one more thing. I'm thinking they need to potentially find a way to turn off the color array filter like Onyx almost did with the Poke 2, which was kind of like a concept item that made it out into the public, because they could turn off the color array filter with X mode. So that's the kind of conundrum right now, is just to clean it up. If they don't do any one of those three things, better resolution, better blacks and whites, or turn off the color array filter, if they don't do any one of those, how is it going to be any different? Why bother? So that's what I'm thinking on that.
Yeah, I mean, PPI obviously has to be upgraded.
Yeah.
I would probably say around like 200s, like they need to do at least, like, because if you look at like 10.3s and 13.3s, it's usually like about 227 PPI is like what it maxes out at for black and white. So if you can have color at that ratio, then it would be like almost like a 1-to-1 in terms of like how many, the resolution of the color. It wouldn't look washed out, like, because Kaleido kind of looks washed out right now on larger devices. On smaller devices, it still looks pretty good, like 7.8 to about 6, or like Hisense phones, like 5.84.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's so condensed on a Hisense phone that surprisingly, Hisense phones from an overall refined perspective is probably the best. Second would be the ink pad color with a sunken screen, because there's no garbage on top of the screen. It's just the screen. Probably the ink pad color looks the best out of, like, pound for pound. It's the largest screen with the best resolution and the best appeal. Everything else is just not looking that great. The Nova 3 color, it's so-so. The 10.3s, although it is in color, the Bigme, to their credit, doesn't look that great. Because, I mean, you can only blow up 100 PPI so much until it gets to the point where it's like, this is blurry. It's like you zoomed in on paint.
Yeah, what I noticed was that the Bigme carved color, it was actually using 127 PPI on the color.
Yeah. Something's happening there. See that?
So they developed their own accumulated color optimization processing technology to display a wider gamut. So
say that 6 times in a row.
Yeah, so they sort of like developed their own sort of engine that actually pumped out 27 PPI extra out of E INK Kaleido. So it is possible via software to increase the PPI on Kaleido. So hopefully E INK will be able to present like a more optimized like API engine to like increase like the PPI. But yeah, I mean, they really need to, for one, making e-readers aren't cheap. Like Peter, and I've talked about making e-readers like a sort of like a modern generation of e-readers for a long time. And it's like the barrier of like cost. You really have to spend anywhere between $1 and about $3 million US at the very least to like to manufacture screens, like the chassis, the internal components, the RAM, the processor, the battery, and everything like that. It's like, between $3 and about $4 million to just make 1,000+ units if you want to make.
And that's not counting logistics, paying tax when you receive things, accounting for loss, chargebacks, people stealing, people losing things. It is a staggering amount of money. And that's why the industry sees white label so much. Bigme white labels out to people. iReader white labels out to more people than you would imagine. Remarkable. Onyx books, Face Note. iReader has been lurking in the background as this mega giant in the e-reader world that refuses to expand globally. But it's funnily enough that they're actually producing globally for other people. like nibs and pens and devices and screens, and it's just crazy, all these companies. And QuirkLogic, which we were talking about in chat here a second ago, someone was like, well, QuirkLogic's 13.3, Stephen Prosser said, and I'm like, you're correct, but remember, they're just using old shells from 6 years ago on the RP1. They didn't develop anything. In fact, QuirkLogic, no discredit to them, but they're strapped for cash in the grand scheme of things. They didn't have $4 million to slap on the table, so they bought blank shells in a blank box with blank pens. There are no QuirkLogic labeling or logoing on any of their products. Anything. It's just, you open it up, it's a brown cardboard box with a blank device on it. So that was their way to, that was the only way. It was either like, okay, $100,000 for blank shells, or millions of dollars to build something from the ground up.
And it's like impossible.
Yeah, we'll go with the blank shells.
They're basically using the Sony DPT RP1 for like the internals and the screen, but they, to their credit, they developed like a pretty good like software experience.
Did you see that? It's like educationally based. There's
screen sharing.
It's all fast.
It's like if we have like 5 QuirkLogics like in a room, and I'm drawing something in real time, everyone else's QuirkLogic is like mirroring what I'm doing in real time. And it works great with like the QuirkLogic, the whiteboard that they have. We've never reviewed it because it's like a 50 inch like digital whiteboard. So if you can imagine in like a school or business setting, they have this huge whiteboard on the screen and I'm drawing on it. And in real time, everyone's QuirkLogic is like updating what the person on the whiteboard is doing. So it's like, it's great for schools and businesses because like it's like a collaborative enterprise level like system. So that's with that.
Without searching, do you know what the name of it is? I can't remember.
The Quilla.
Quarry or something. Ah, Quilla. Yeah. Surprising. I don't know where they got that. Did they get that from Rico?
No. They built that like literally like 5 years ago or less. Oh.
Right, but I wonder, okay, I mean, I find it difficult that a company who would choose 6-year-old hardware to make their main device would be able to have the capacity to create something of an immensely large scale from the ground up. But I haven't seen that form factor, the Quilla, the big one in question, anywhere else. So they could have just been like biding their time with the small 13.3 that they just grabbed from Sony. And they're like, we finally built this in the background. You know, this is what we wanted, the Quilla. This is what we aimed for. It could be that, but I'm thinking they white labeled it, but I don't want to say anything on that.
I just honestly don't know because it's always been like a very niche product. I mean, what it costs like $5,600 US.
I think it's on sale for $5,000 US. And because of the scale of the box, the size, the weight, just how unwieldy it is, we're not even able to get a sample because there's no way. They're like, oh yeah, we'll ship this to you for like $900 freight, and then we'll take it back after you guys do a couple of vids. Like, there's not even any way for us to logistically get our hands on it. There's no way.
How are, with our camera setup, how are we gonna like do like a 50-inch display, well,
you just back everything up and just stand against the wall. But that's not the worst issue. The issue is getting one from them and them saying, okay, we'll ship you a $5,000 product and hope nothing goes wrong and UPS bends it or something, so there's just a lot of problems with that, which is why we covered that Rico device, that 40-something inch E INK, and they're just kind of like, it's not that we don't trust you, it's just that you can imagine how difficult it is for us to send samples willy-nilly of $5,000-$6,000 products to all corners of the world, one to South Africa for review, one to Spain for review, and it's like, it's not easy to just be like $5,000, $5,000, $5,000. So that's why typically these gigantic units we don't get samples for. Nobody does, really.
So let's look at some history here.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, we've been to CES and to a lot of industry events over the years. We saw some interesting products from, Pixel Qi when we saw that in Taiwan when it first launched. We were at CES when they announced like the Bridgestone e-reader.
A tire company making e-readers. How did that even come across the desk? Who said that?
So let's take a look down memory lane, if you will, and look at some of the companies that have come and gone. If you look at the e-reader industry as a whole, you know, it basically started with like the Kindle when it came out in like 2007. That sort of kicked off like the modern ebook and e-reader revolution. There was e-readers before, like the Sony and the Rocketbook, but I mean, you know, they were using like, you know, like the Rocketbook was using like an LCD display. You know,
see, that was the thing. You're right. Like the Rocketbook was the first one to use an e-book reader, but it was a TFT monochrome. But Sony predated Kindle 2.5 years with E Ink.
Right.
Sony's been the longest and most current, longest lasting E Ink user of products for like 18 years.
Right. So, but I mean, the reason why I don't really discount those is because you couldn't buy books on the device.
And no one knows them.
Yeah, I mean, what the Kindle did, which is why I say they kickstarted the e-reader revolution revolution is because they were able to have a device that had a bookstore on it, and you could buy books on with the e-reader itself. I mean, it was like $400 or $500 when it first came out, but it really sort of showed people what these handheld e-readers were capable of. And once like the Kindle had released like a couple generations, you know, that prompted Kobo to get into business, Barnes and Noble to get into business. Like they got into business a few short years after the original Kindle. So E-ink screens, we talk a lot about E-ink because obviously virtually 95% of all e-readers are using an E-ink panel on them. You know, whether it's Kaleido, it's still using E-ink because it's E-ink is Kaleido, but they're using like, you know, E-ink Carta like layers on top of that as well. But E-ink wasn't always the juggernaut as they are today. There was literally a ton of companies that were all vying for a piece of this e-reader revolution because, you know, before Barnes & Noble ever made a device, before Kobo had ever made a device, there was all these competing technologies that were all vying either for their business or for business in China making e-readers or in specific markets in the world. So I thought we should like dive into a little historical type of thing and check some of it out. So the first one company, Peter, I want to talk about is Plastic Logic. We've seen their technology around. The company's been involved in business for, you know, e-paper displays for like 20 years. But, you know, they don't really have any commercial success stories. They're in 2010, they tried to release their Q e-reader, spelled Q-U-E, but nobody really bought it, and it was like shelved as one of those like, you know, antiquated notions of what an e-reader was possible of. So they haven't really done anything of note over the years. Like they've gotten hundreds of millions of dollars of investment from E-ink and shady Russian state organizations and stuff like that, where like the people that actually gave Plastic Logic money were all like sent either to the gulags or were like arrested. So it was like this big like conspiracy thing where all the people that gave Plastic Logic money ended up like in jail. So in 2020, they tried to target smart wearables, and this was like, they did do some commercial products. They didn't do it themselves, but like their like e-paper was found in a sailing jacket, in a smartwatch, and a credit card. So the next company I want to talk about is Clearink. We've seen their technology a lot. They've demoed things from color e-readers to color smartwatches. they've done a few interesting things, but they've been in the business for 10 years and have never really released a commercially viable product. So they've raised money nonstop as well, sort of like Plastic Logic. Hundreds of millions of dollars from Lenovo and all these like Chinese companies that were like just like pouring money. If you can think about it, like basically Plastic Logic and clearink were like black holes. It's just like throwing money and it just went into a black hole, and nobody's ever saw anything. It was just basically money pits. So what's happening with clearink? Well, they eventually got bought out in 2020 by a series of Chinese investments and basically disappeared into China, and we haven't heard anything since. So at least the original founders of clearink got their golden parachute. The CEOs, the original founders, like they got paid finally, but they never actually did anything. Next company, Miricelle. So this is a company that we actually had some experience with because we
the Kyobo.
That's right.
That's right.
So we actually reviewed that on our YouTube channel way back on the day.
Holy moly, you know what? I think before we, and yes, everyone did have ourselves a little business acquisition merger ourselves back in the day, a very small scale, but we actually bought out Shopee Readers, that little store, way back when, and then we just took over and we were Shopee Readers until we moved into Goody Reader. We were selling the Kyobo Miracell. We were like, is this concept, is it, it's real. And that was one of our first distribution agreements that you got through like an eBay seller that you contacted, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm in Korea, I have Kyobos, and we're like, can we buy them? And they're like, yeah. And we're like, oh, so this is how you do business. And then, granted, this was like 2011 or something when we were just starting, right? So we were learning the ropes and everything, but yeah, that's right. They did have a product.
Yeah, so it was like,
wow.
When did it come out? It came out like...
I'm going to say 12. I'll look it up on our channel here because it'll be there. We have all of our videos. Kyobo. So the Kyobo Miracell full review. Oh, 12, exactly. June 18th, 2012, we did a review. I think this is when we were a basement operation, and I think we did this review on your coffee table on like a placemat or something.
Yeah, if you look at
You're like, grab a placemat.
I mean, when we started on YouTube, we didn't have any frames of reference because,
nothing.
I think we started in like 2009, and like there really wasn't 1080p cameras were not even the norm yet. It was all just like handheld camcorders or like
a camcorder.
Yeah, that was basically it. Like you didn't really have like the Canon cameras yet that could shoot like 1080p. Like unless you wanted to spend $10,000, but we started really small and and we sort of just like grew from there as like e-readers became more and more popular.
I think at one point I remember shooting at your place, and we were so small that we were like, quick, there's still light, because we were just depending on the sun going by your place before we were like, why don't we get studio lights? We were just like, no, the sun is still here, like a bunch of Amish people. It was hilarious, man. Oh, jeez, humble beginnings.
Yeah, unlike Miricelle, he actually was conceptualized and inspired by blue morpho butterflies, which reflect light using nanoscale structures on their wings that cause incoming light waves to interfere with one another, reflecting only specific wavelengths. So Qualcomm bought this technology from this guy in 2004 for $170 million. They released a few products. The Kyobo, it wasn't released by them, but this technology was licensed to the Kyobo, which is like a bookstore in South Korea, and then they just released it as the Kyobo Miracell. they tried to, they basically didn't have any luck with e-readers, one company ever using their technology. So they released the Talk smartwatch, which actually is on our YouTube channel, because we were actually at CES when they actually unveiled it. Yeah, it's spelled a TOK smartwatch.
Whoa, yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, very nice. Nice.
I have a pretty good memory of like tech that like we reviewed like 10 years ago, like the 14 years ago. So it was like, they developed it but didn't really release it. They did a concept smartphone. But in 2013, Qualcomm announced that Miracell would be discontinued. They basically lost $300 million on like the current like operation. Next, let's talk about Liquavista. So this technology uses electrowetting technology. It's basically like a type of like LCD type of panel, similar to like monochrome stuff. But in its time, it basically was easy for factories to use it because it uses liquid crystals that use a different fill. So you could easily take like a factory that makes LCD displays and just edit it slightly to make their technology, which was like the big draw behind it. So it was originally created by Philips R&D. It was bought by Samsung in 2011. It was then reacquired by its original founders and then bought by Amazon like 5 or 6 years ago. And
wait, so Philips was the brains behind it?
Yeah, they originally made it.
The guys that make those stereo systems and DVD players.
Yeah, well,
they were the genius minds behind Liquid. I thought it was. I didn't know. I was 2 steps behind where you just said it came from. I only knew like the chain of command from here. Not Philips was the source. That's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what Philips wanted to do is like. If you can imagine like all their LCD panels like on their their ghetto blasters and like their Walkmans and like all of their devices, right? They wanted to try to use this new technology to replace like all the low quality LCD screens and stuff.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So bought by Samsung. Samsung never did anything with it. And then it was sold to like Amazon. And Amazon actually built some infrastructure in like Belgium and some other countries to like, they hired like executive team to like bring Liquavista to market. And like everybody reported on this. You probably remember. Everybody was talking about it. But Amazon never did anything with it. Everyone kind of thought that the future of Kindles will be Liquavista. The future of Kindle Fires will be Liquavista. Because then that
would have been interesting.
It would have, because instead of Amazon like licensing all this like technology for their screens, they could have owned the technology that went into the screens. So if they would have used that on Kindles instead of E INK, if they would have used this on like Kindle Fire devices instead of like LCD panels, they would have saved a ton of money on like licensing fees to E INK, buying the panels, and then buying the different panels for their Fire devices, because they would have been able to just like do all of that in house. But if you look at the greatest things in Amazon, they make way more money with like AWS, like Amazon Web Services, than they do Kindles or Fire tablets. And I think they kind of realized that, where as many e-readers as Amazon sells a year, which they've never disclosed how many they do, but generally it's probably they sell about 1 million plus Fire and Kindles a year. If you look at, there's like display organizations that track tablet sales, and Amazon's usually about like number 4 in the global in the global sales for tablets. It's usually like Samsung and like Apple, and usually Amazon's like 3 or sometimes 4. They sort of like dip, but they tend to like sell pretty well, like 1 million units like a quarter for like their Fire tablets. And you got to think that probably they sell more e-readers than Fire tablets because they're cheaper, right? Like e-readers are like $99, $69 like on sale. Fire higher tablets, generally you're paying anywhere between like $119 to about like $300 or $400,
Right.
depending on like if you're getting like a 10-inch and decking it out and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the story on Miracell and Liquavista. And we talked about this. Bridgestone. You know, when you think of Bridgestone, what do you think?
How are these guys in the offices going to work, getting some coffee, going to the water cooler? You know, he finally sits down at his desk and someone just puts a piece of paper and they're like, well, I know we're a tire company. Yeah. So what should we do? More tires? Nope. Screen tech. And it's like, wait, what? That has literally nothing to do with anything at all. That was a surprise. That was really weird.
So, Bridgestone in about 2008 to about 2010 developed LPD technology, which stands for Quick Response Liquid Powder Display. Not power display, powder display.
Oh, I thought you made a mistake.
Nope.
Actually, powder?
Okay. So they created it through a joint partnership between Bridgestone and Vivitech. And it's basically a screen and logic controller system for e-readers. Low power consumption, which is interesting it was capable of displaying 4,096 colors. E INK Kaleido, that's what the exact amount of colors that it could display in the last 2 or 3 years. So from when this technology was developed in 2010, it could display as many colors as we're seeing today in 2021.
Yeah, it was a shock to hear that Bridgestone had anything to do with it, and that it wasn't half-assed. It was definitely like,
we saw it. We actually have videos on our channel. So if you search our channel for Bridgestone, we actually showed an 8-inch device and a 21-inch device.
Yeah, that would have been really interesting if they just teamed up with someone to just get over the hurdle and release a viable product. Because
unfortunately, even Bridgestone wasn't able to find anybody to buy this technology. Yeah. So, although it was created in 2010, the company discontinued their e-paper business in 2012. Can you imagine spending all of that money? Like, if we've learned anything about all the companies we've talked about so far, hundreds of millions of dollars lost. You know, you got to think that Bridgestone easily lost like 50 to 100 million on this whole endeavor, and they just they've closed their businesses like within a few years of doing it. You know, I mean, Bridgestone canceled it really early. Like, you know, Miricelle, like. Plastic Logic's still going, but clearink is like they're an X factor. But there's been so many of these companies that like developed it, and then like everything was just like shut down within a few years.
Was that the last one on your list, by the way? Because I was going to say something. But
I have a huge list, but I'm only going to talk about a few of them.
Yeah, only do a couple more because I wanted to kind of give some context to all this when you're done your spotlight.
Right. Ones. So probably the most famous one is PixelQui. The one laptop per child program. You guys probably heard about that. It was like PixelQui technology, like laptops. You know, they originally were trying to get these all done in Africa. You know, you guys might have recalled hearing about it. You can just like simply Google it. But the Notion Ink Atom actually used the PixelQui technology, which actually we reviewed on our YouTube channel.
I was just searching for that because I was like, when you said PixelQui or Qi, depending on where you are in the world, I was like, didn't we have something? We
interviewed them in Taiwan.
I remember.
And
here it is.
We talked to the.
You talked to the CEO.
Yeah, we talked to the founders, Mary Lou Jepson and like her husband, which actually they co-ran the company together. Mary Lou Jepson works for like Google X now, I think, like for like the Google's Moonshot program. Yeah, but basically, They started in 2008. They had 15. They basically had shipped over 3 million displays for laptops as part of their one laptop per child program. Is mainly sent to Africa, and this was all done in 2012. They were shipping, thousands of tablets every month, but they basically just hit a peak and faded into obscurity. They never really officially closed, but I know the tech was sold to 2 or 3 different companies over the years. They tried to do something with it, but barely anyone remembers their name. Their old domain name is run by an SEO content farm. Honorable mentions, Kent Displays. I'm not gonna read into everything that they did, but their technology powers the boogie boards and all the boogie board clones.
Oh yeah. I wonder if they have any tie into the very few units like the Kaite slates that we do, because they're the only ones that don't use that weird black magnet rainbow thing that the boogie boards use.
Yeah.
But they use the black and white reversed polarity ones that if you draw on a kaite, it ends up being black rather than the absence of you striking away the magnets on a boogie board. So I wonder if they have had any play in what the kaite slates were, because those kaite slates were and still to this day one of the weirdest kind of anomalies we've seen, because not a lot of magnet boards do that. A pure white paper background with black magnet text. Very strange. Yeah,
it's one of those products that are you can buy them for $50 on Amazon or less.
They're cheap. Yeah. They're pretty cheap.
Cypix, you guys may not recall them.
I don't even know who that is.
Yeah, they basically the Pen. I think we reviewed this, but the Pan Digital. Remember the Pan Digital devices?
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. So they were using that. They also it was on the Hanlon A6 and Hanlon A9. It was basically the competition at that time were between Cypix and E INK that was using their Visplex technology, which was on the original Kindle and things like that. And E INK ended up buying them out. And basically, looking at all those major companies like Qualcomm, Amazon, Samsung, Bridgestone, it's nobody can make this work. The only companies that actually made something work in the modern era, the last 2 or 3 years, Dalian, Good Displays, but DS Slurry.
Oh yeah, and Good Displays didn't even make it, but they're kind of spearheading it.
Right.
But yeah,
they're sort of spearheading the selling the displays and doing demo units with totally just shells and internal components and everything. It's basically they're doing the heavy lifting, the marketing, the sales, and everything like that.
Everything in the public eye.
Right. So this complication, this, what goes into this technology is very, very complicated. How would you explain it, Peter? I don't want to talk about the layer of cofferdam on the surface of the TFT. You know what I mean? Pixel electrodes.
It was tough. To keep it simple, I'll give you a backstory of why I'm going to keep it simple. We talked to everyone in the industry. Weifeng, who is the absolute source in China, Weifeng, Weifeng, that made this. Good Displays is spearheading it and bringing it to the world. Re-Ink Stone and Topjoy was our first connection to this, because we got physical samples there in our office. We talked to these guys and we're like, hey, Good Displays, and to a lesser extent Weifeng, who's impossible to get a hold of. How would you explain DES? And they sent us this Google translated traditional Chinese document. And they were like, the negative expenditures of cofferdam end up resulting in positive integers. And I was like, okay, so what? And we were reading it, and we have people that read and write Chinese in our office too, and we showed them the Chinese copy, and they're like, okay, what? So we all kind of, after months of back and forth, It basically is as simple as we can get it without going into like physics and quantum computing. E Ink uses pixels, a grid of pixels, and every single
Well, they use like
of,
capsules, like
capsules,
black and white
pixels.
Yeah, they use black and white,
right,
positively and negatively charged like particles, but it's like black and white, which is why e-readers only show black and white and a combination of colors.
Right. There's still pixels because they're still gridded, and it's still PPI, which is pixels per inch, and that's the unit of measurement. So there's still isolated areas of white particles and black, and when they get positively or negatively charged respectively, they either move up or down, and then when you look at the screen, it becomes an image. With DES, it's this kind of floaty, sloshing tub of just a big bathtub effect, and when something needs to produce, it's like the bathtub like sloshes up and creates an image, but then you get all this like residual stuff, so then when you look down, you're like, this looks kind of stainy and like all washed out. I mean, it's very colorful, but the unit itself, the technology doesn't seem refined to the point of just having isolated capsules like E Ink does. This one's just like everything all mixing and mashing around. That's the easiest way we were able to describe it, because if we say the words cofferdam, 99% of you guys don't even know what that is. We don't even 100% know what that is. So that's why it's just easier to say that E Ink operates in more of a gridded pixel layout, whereas DES slurry technology doesn't. It's just a completely kind of open panel way to develop the image, and it's not very intuitive. It's not very it's ungraspable of a concept.
Yeah,
to understand.
hardly anyone's written about the company, and like even like reaching out to the company itself, it's like they have like white white what do they call it? White paper, which basically talks about the specs, like what went into the creation of the technology, and it's just so convoluted that like no one really has like written about in a really informed manner about what it is and what it does. Like, we can give analogies like the bathtub type of thing and how it kind of like sloshes around and then it eventually like shows like a thing. It's basically like each pixel is surrounded by a layer of cofferdom, and like you really sort of have to like look into like what cofferdom is. We haven't really done it to like a ton of research like about it, because there's really only been 2 commercial products, like
and they're not even guaranteed to be actually real
because they've been
crowdfunding
technology, crowdfunding platforms, and a lot of some people have received them. I mean, we received demo units and stuff like that, but like a lot of people invested in it like 9 to 10 months ago and still haven't gotten anything yet. Right. And the company both of them seem to just be expanding into foreign markets and raising money. Like they're trying to raise money in Japan, like they're trying to raise additional revenue in all these countries. And there's a lot of shadiness around those 2 companies. And but the technology's sound. Like we've looked at like the Reinkstone R1 and the Top Joy Butterfly. They have a 6-inch model and a 7.8. We reviewed like the bigger one, and I mean it displays more colors than E INK Kaleido 1 and 2. The colors look better. Like we've done like a video where we looked at Kaleido 2 versus DS Slurry, and we
did that video.
We did like I forget what device we had, but we did like Kaleido 1 and the DS Slurry device side by side, and we showed like same images, the same types of books, same PDFs and stuff, and overall DES could display more colors at a higher PPI, and the color layer could be churned off where you could only show black and white.
Is true,
and that's only done because
a color palette on the floating ball that you can actually toggle it and be like, I don't want color anymore. Boom, it instant, doesn't even refresh. So in that regard, it's funny how you go to an email or a browser and it's like and it refreshes like there's running out of. Like there's no tomorrow, but then you have this amazing cutting-edge technology where you're able to cut off the color, and then it's just like, how are you able to do that so proficiently, but you can't even like refresh a web page? It was hit or miss on a lot of things that they were trying to present.
Yeah, if you look at it, it's like, since there's only been two companies out of China that have used this technology, and it's not in the hands of too many people yet, that there really isn't. I think the best way to take like advantage of DES slurry is through software enhancements, because you know, we've done like multi, you know, so we sort of like, because this technology was so new and exciting and there was only two companies doing it and they were basically developing it at the same time, we were like talking to them on a regular basis. We're like, yo, can you know, we noticed some of these bugs with the device, can you fix these? And they were actually super responsive and fixed them.
We did them in like 5 or 6 hour videos.
They fixed them within like 3 or 4 days, and they're like, here's a new build, and we're like, oh, you know, these bugs were fixed, but this created like more bugs. So we were almost like unofficial bug testers for them. But this was because like we wanted to see like this technology showcased to the public in a manner that was pretty well bug free, and like just like showed the strengths around like, you know, DES slurry. Because really, if you look at the you know, we talked about all these companies, right? Miricelle, Liquavista, you know, Bridgestone, all these companies where their technology didn't go anywhere. And then suddenly like Good Displays markets like a product that is suddenly in all these devices within about less than a year of developing the technology to being showcased in commercial products. I mean, that's pretty awesome, you know, and that's why I'm excited.
The panels themselves are real too. Like, if you guys are a little bit taken aback by the fact that Reinkstone and Topjoy and Whiskey and all these the WeWood company trifecta of like, you know, the questionables, those companies have nothing to do with the panel. The panel of DES slurry and the technology made by Weifeng and distributed by Good Displays is 115% an actual real thing. You could buy it right now. You can buy the panels and ship them to your house and be like, yeah, I got the panel. And it would just have some flex cable hanging off because you haven't done software, you haven't tooled a piece of plastic to put it in. But those are real. DES exists and it's actually real. No one has released anything in a place where you can use your credit card to buy something and receive it and be like, this is my new DES thing. Nobody. No one has that in a real capacity right now.
Yeah, it's like you have to crowdfund it through like these two companies in order to get like a commercial product that's like enclosed in a shell that has like RAM, batteries, processors, and everything. And like they have like, you know, like an Android like driven operating system, so you can sideload apps and stuff. But you can't just like go to an e-commerce store like Amazon and buy it. It's only crowdfunding, and like with, you know, companies that rely on exclusive crowdfunding without having like a store where like new people could just like buy it and it ships out in a couple of weeks, like it might as well not even exist, because
it doesn't exist in that regard. And I was gonna say, like Michael was listing all these companies, and it's great for the e-reader industry because it's crucial information. It shows what succeeds, what doesn't succeed, what works, what doesn't work. Why we're talking about all these companies is because there is only one company on the planet Earth you can use your credit card to buy e-paper products, and essentially, other than maybe something on eBay that someone developed from the ground up and put it in a shell and is using Raspberry Pi or something like that, it's gonna be E INK Holdings. All this Pixel Key, Pixel Twee, Mirasol technology, Liquavista, there's nobody that has a commercially packaged, retail available product that you can say, that's $2.99 plus tax is $3.25. Okay, cool. Pay with my credit card. Hi, UPS or FedEx. Thanks for my product. Rip. Oh, look, my new Mirasol device 2022. Nobody. Every single thing, from a smartwatch to a thermometer to your price tags in your grocery store to a Ricoh display that's $7,000 to the car that E INK put panels on of a BMW, it's all going to be one company that makes one style of technology. That's why we're talking about all these historical companies that tried this, tried that. Money came from here to there and there to there. No one's making anything except E Ink. Period. That's the only company. Everything. And it's mind-boggling to think that there's no competitors. It'd be like Coca-Cola makes every soft drink in the world. No one else has any chance. Oh, I don't want to do anything because Coca-Cola's there. And it's just mind-boggling to think of an industry like that where it's completely just one player in the game.
Yep. Like, I think it's because, like, of its pedigree. Like, so initial research on E Ink started at the MIT Media Lab, where the first patent was filed in 1996. Yeah. And it was sold to PrimeView in 2009, which was just basically like, that was like the start of like E Ink. So, this was like around like they've E Ink has spent hundreds of millions of dollars. They spent $200 million just on their color technology, like Advanced Color ePaper, Triton 1, Triton 2, Kaleido 1, Kaleido 2. They spent $200 million just on those technologies. And that doesn't count like Visplex, Pearl, Pearl HD, Carta, Carta HD, Regal waveform controllers, which removes ghosting. Like, you know, that's not even counting like the technology that powers the supermarket stuff, like Spectra. You know, they developed like an entirely new line of technology just for the like the frozen food aisle, because price tags and frozen food like things are different from the ones that are just like sitting on your macaroni and cheese. But I mean, out of all the companies that basically started around the same time, you know, E Ink is probably the only surviving member that has become the largest and most dominant player in that industry. And all of these like sort of released products at the same time. Like Sony did it, Rocketbook did it, and then Kindle used E Ink, and then everybody started using E Ink, you know? Like, because it was like the only technology that was proven, that was economically viable, that was cheap to buy. You know, E Ink, like, basically, it wasn't that their technology was better than everyone else's, but they had like they had scale. You know, they basically had factories in Taiwan that were just pumping these out. And then they expanded into China and had like 4 production lines in China. So they were basically be able to outproduce and outprice everybody. And they just had a gangster marketing division. You know what I mean? Like, that's their strongest like asset, is being able to just convince anybody who wanted to enter the e-reader industry, you have to use our technology. You know,
and it still holds true 17 years later, essentially. You can say, oh, well, there's all these other technologies that do this kind of reflectivity and have this level of efficiency. It's like, all right, go make something. Ooh, okay, I will. Okay, this company and that company, I want your tech. And E Ink's just like, all right, how's that going? Are you good? You released something yet? Oh no. How about buy some E Ink panels? We have everything ready for you. We can tool your devices for you. And that's why, to this day, almost decades later, they're still the only guys, because of that, because of what Michael said. They're already there. They're present. They're ready. They have infrastructure. There's just no question. Anyone that comes and goes, we made $200 million in research. It's like, well, sure, but that didn't lead to actually releasing something that someone can buy, that someone can review, that someone can hold. Concepts at trade shows aside, there's no other company.
Yeah, and that's the thing about everybody on this list. Like, Pixelqui, I think, was basically the only company that actually shipped out hundreds of thousands to millions of products, you know, but they were shipping laptops to African countries, not something that like us, like, you know, North American people or like the Western world would even be aware of, you know, because it's just, it didn't really make the news here. One laptop per child, you probably have heard of that. And that was Pixelqui. And basically, you know, they were popular for like maybe 3 or 4 years and just basically disappeared after that. They didn't have staying power. Whereas with, you know, Clearink and Mirasol, Liquavista, Bridgestone, you know, like all these companies, they didn't really have the manufacturing side figured out. They had like the prototyping and the cool minds and like the brain power to come up with all this tech. But to bring it to market, they didn't have factories where they could say mass produce it and say, oh, you already do business with E INK? Well, we can offer it to you at half the price because we have scale. You know, they couldn't do that. They were basically like they're basically hunting around for clients to buy their technology before they had the infrastructure to even make it. So that's you know, if I was going to make an e-reader and somebody quoted me like, you know, this tech is like amazing. It could just like double the amount of E INK and stuff. It's like, okay, I'll buy 300 units as like an evaluation. Oh, it's not going to be ready for 4 years.
Or it is ready and they're like, oh, you want 300 units? Okay, well, that'll be $900 per panel. And it's like, wait. E INK's only charging $80 per panel. And they're like, oh, well, you know, we're smaller scale. It's like, well, then I'm going with E INK. That's what's happened a lot in our industry as well, is that, as we said, E INK's already ready, so that when other players even have the idea of being able to entertain shipping units out, the costs are higher because they have limited staff, they're newer in the game, they're smaller, and they rely on higher MOQs, minimum order quantities, a lot, whereas E INK can get away with, yeah, you can buy 100 pieces. You don't have to buy 1 million pieces from us. Whereas these smaller companies are like, we hope you can place a gigantic order because we need money to fund making them, and we need to get paid first so we can make them and then give them to you. And that's why no one has survived except for, well, actually not even survived. No one has made anything, except I do have to, now that we've talked about it, I do have to give a shout out to Kyobo Mirasol, because they did, for a good 6 months, they were producing, manufacturing, and shipping consumer available products through a couple retailers. South Korea has basically been the only guys to have anything retail available for a purchasable amount in the world other than E INK, the Kyobo Mirasol. So it was a real product. We had several of them. We used to buy and sell them ourselves. And they lasted a very short time.
They did. It's like their shelf life was like pretty small. I think it's because like you look at E INK and they've like constantly innovated over the years, from Visplex to Pearl to Carta and now and beyond, you know, whereas like everybody else on this list basically had the first generation of their technology and they never really refined it into like, you know, multiple generations. And that's why they've all failed, you know, like Plastic Logic, Pixel Qi, Bridgestone, Liquavista, clearink. They only had one type of technology that was sort of like version 1, and they never refined it past the version 1. They just basically repurposed, oh, no one's buying our e-inks, our e-paper displays, let's pivot to smart wearables, let's pivot towards this, let's pivot towards that, you know, and it's like nothing stuck. And it's like, you know, E INK was like the only company that basically ever basically refine their technologies over time from multiple generations, which was like an easy trail to follow. And, you know, that's, you know, manufacturing to scale and refining technology. Those were like two of the main reasons why all those companies failed, and why E INK is like basically the only game in town when it comes to e-paper displays nowadays. So it'll be interesting to see in like 5 years from now what DS Slurry is doing. Or
they're the only guys doing exactly what you said, regular updates, refining the products, and, you know, reaching out to do, you know, albeit as questionable as they may seem, reaching out and distributing their screens and technology to people trying to make something. Because in the past 16 months, that's the only other competing technology anywhere right now is DES.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's coming up.
As we've been in business for like 12 or 14 years, I don't even know how long it's been. We started in like 2009.
2009, and then YouTube videos like early 2010. Yeah.
So how many years has that been?
Well, like 12, 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as you know, Peter and I have seen all this technology that we've talked about today
Yeah.
with our eyes, like anywhere from like 2010 to about like 2015. So we've seen companies with promising technologies that have been in commercial products before. So hopefully Good Displays is not a Pixel Qi or like a Plastic Logic or like a Miricelle, where we saw a few products, we got really excited about the technology. Does DES Slurry have staying power? That's something that we can't answer today, but maybe we can answer in like 5 years from now if more products use their technology, or if the E INK Stone and Top Jaw were the only companies ever to use their technology. So
Right. Right.
it's too early to tell, but yeah, that's the story of where in the world, did all these e-paper companies go. And we've talked about this for a while. Is there any questions from chat or anything like that?
People are really talking amongst themselves. It's fantastic. Ace of Base is here, and Kevin Bossy, a resident pro who's probably more knowledgeable than us, is just killing it in the chat. You guys are a very good community that's very knowledgeable, and I think they're just kind of supporting each other. Yossi Felder was like, there should be an E INK flip phone, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. That's pretty cool, because there's a lot of people that are like construction workers and people that have to go on location, and they don't want smartphones because they don't last a day. They're hard to use. They're brittle. They're fragile. Whereas a rugged flip phone, it's like, I just throw that thing around. Phones are E INK is everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere, and it's like we said, it appeared on a car the other day, and it was just like, that's something I would just bet my life on that would never happen. And it did. It's on bus schedules. It's on elevators. It's on I would never think E INK would have anything to do with buying a bag of apples, but it does. And it's everywhere, man. Like thermometers. I got 3 E INK watches behind me. Like, it's insane. So anywhere there's a screen or something you need to see, you could put E INK in its place. That's basically what's been happening.
So, what is on, as we wrap things up here on the show, what do you have on your review schedule? What can people expect out of our YouTube channel in the next couple of weeks?
Well, I got to actually run into the office and do some voiceovers later today on the iReader Pro Lite, the Lite 2 Pro, which is a very, very nice lightweight e-reader. And it's really cool. And we just wrapped up the Xiaomi Mix 7, which is a very nice surprise. It's doing very well on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out.
Did you send me pictures on that yet?
I think they're taking some pics. When I get into the office, I can send you a email with those, because I'm at home right now.
Okay.
But we also are gonna do we got a lot of Bigme stuff coming. We want to respect our new friends at Bigme by reviewing their products, but we're not going to flood the channel. Like Mike said, we're not going to do the B1, the B1 Max, the B1 Max Plus. Like, we're not going to do
that. There's like X6. 7 or 8 devices. It's like,
it's too
many.
Can
pick and choose what we think are the best and most like compelling
That's
ones.
Right. Yeah, we're going to do the X6, which is the 13.3. We're going to do the Pocket, which is a 7-inch. There are no 7-inch devices on the market that have note-taking. There's 6.8, Moby Scribe, King Jim Farino. There's 7.8, but there's no 7. What about the Onyx Leaf? There's no note-taking on the Onyx Leaf. So we're going to bring that in. How King Boyu Collaboration Company is talking about the P10 Pro. That's going to be coming up. There might be some new stuff from Onyx in the next couple months. And I think... we just have some stragglers. Like we've had a lot of requests for, ever since I did that personal video of mine unboxing my Sony phone, everyone's like, oh, do some more stuff on the Sony. It's like, well, maybe. So if we have time, we're going to show off how the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III can not only be utilized as an actual reading device, but remember, the Sony e-reader store still exists in Japan. The one that kind of began it all. the Sony ebook store is still alive and well. You can still do it on e-readers in Japan as well. So we're going to show that off if we have some time. Skagen smartwatch. We got a lot of stuff on the back end. So just keep staying tuned because there's going to be lots of stuff for everyone. Mike has kicked off his good news segments again. So every couple other videos has been a good e-reader news blast. And they're very informative. They're very fun. They're very upbeat. And lots of good stuff to check out.
Yeah, as you can see, like we have a whole way new of doing videos now. You know, we're using different programs. Like I've invested in colors. Like you can see like ambience behind me. I have like a ring light that I'm using, a better camera. Where I'm shooting in 4K now. So you know, Peter and I's like, or Peter and me, for these monthly videos, you know, you could expect better video quality, like better audio quality. So that's why I'm taking advantage of like my setup right now to, you know, just take some of the bigger stories like on our news website and do like audio, like a sort of video and audio short form on our channel, so we can make you guys informed of you know, the big stories of like the day, and you know what you could expect, and they're more of like evergreen content. So the articles now will be relevant in a couple of years, like hidden tricks of the Kobo or hidden tricks of the Kindle, right. Or you know, the Kindle keyboard has a secret what is it? What's that, like that Minesweeper game? Is it called Minesweeper?
It is Minesweeper. What? Kindle has a Minesweeper
yeah,
game
on the Kindle keyboard.
What?
Yeah. So it's little stories like that with like cool little things. I do have some breaking news that Huawei
yeah.
is okay. So they just announced the Mate Paper, which is their first ever e-reader and features a 10.3-inch display. It's compatible with the Huawei M Pencil, which could be used like to draw and take notes and everything like that. So it's a digital note-taking device, and instead of using Android, it's using Harmony OS, which is like their sort of like you know, operating system. So it's good. It's basically Huawei's answer to Android. You know, it has like apps like on it and stuff like that. The M Pencil supports 4096 levels of pressure sensitivity with 26 milliseconds of latency, which is around the same experience as the Remarkable. And yeah, it's 10.3 inches. We don't know like the exact specs yet, although it has 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of internal storage, and an 86% screen to body ratio. Fingerprint sensor. It weighs 360 grams. We don't know when it'll go on sale, but it will cost around $560 like US. So that will be like the price that Huawei's charging for it. But it includes the M Pencil and a folio case for that amount. So I'm going to be writing a story on this on our website, so I'll be able to go into this on like more detail. You know, look at like the Chinese announcement, see if there's any video of it and things like that. So that's breaking news that just like happened as we started talking about the show. So e-reader industry, Peter, it never sleeps.
It doesn't, no. If any indication, right when we thought it was slowing down, you know, we hear like, oh, we have a new iReader, we have a Skagen smartwatch. It's like Bigme releases 10 new devices. And we're like, all right, we're going to be busy. We're going to definitely be busy with that. That's...
Yeah, I mean,
it's a lot of new stuff.
Like the, what was it, the Mix 7 by who?
Xiaomi, the Mix 7. That was a surprise that it was in English. We received our sample. Xiaomi's like, hope you enjoy it. We're like, oh, thanks. It's going to be Chinese only. No discredit, but it's like everything's Chinese only, these kind of companies. And we're like, oh, language options. Oh, dang. Language options with actual options. And it skinned the whole thing. And I was like, oh, what about Baidu and Weibo? I probably can't. Oh, I can uninstall them. And I just put on like Instagram Go, Facebook Lite, Chrome browser. And we were just sitting around it. We were like, well, that's kind of cool because... It's the thinnest e-reader ever on the panel side. It's only 3 millimeters thin, which is freaking mental.
I saw it.
Really
You could
thin.
like look at like the first 10 or 15 seconds of the video that Peter made, that for Peter and his team made for the review of the Mix 7, and he actually shows how thin it is, and it's staggering how thin it is. Like but it is like it is like it harkens back to like the Oasis design. It basically has the same design of like the Oasis, but it's thinner than the Oasis. And
it is. But if you looked at it and you squinted your eyes, you can't see. You don't even know what you're looking at.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm going to be writing a story on this, but we can kind of tease it here in the closing moments of our show. Is that there's suddenly a big movement with Chinese companies to adopt English, whereas you know, if you look at, we've reviewed a lot of Xiaomi products in the past, and the
Moan W7, the Mi Reader, 2 generations of Ink Palm, all Chinese.
All Chinese. But now their latest generation stuff that's built in 2022, it's no longer just in Chinese, it's English. And that's just not with that company. Almost all Chinese companies where we've reviewed things in the past, to the iReader, to the iFlyTech, to the Bigme, a lot of them now are embracing English on their latest generation devices. And they never really publicly disclosed why. And in a lot of cases, it's us talking with them directly, because we have, you know, as Good e-Reader, we're pretty well the only major news website is devoted towards e-readers. Like, you know, we
talk to them. Yeah. I mean, if you guys are a little bit confused about that, we actually, like, a couple guys in our company that like speak and read Chinese and stuff, they have like the managing directors of Bigme and iReader on WeChat on their phone. So like, you know, when they're sitting around the office and they're just doing this, like they're talking with like essentially the CEOs of the company, being like, hey, you should put English on your stuff. And then they drink their coffee and it's like, sure. It's like, oh, cool. Like, it's not as simple as that. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff happens. It really
you know, it's basically, we've made like it was important to us that when we review products that are only Chinese only, it doesn't get the views as the English stuff does. It doesn't get like user engagement either on our reviews on our website or the YouTube video. And like, we realized that. I mean, for us, for Good e-Reader, it's important that we review every single new e-reader that comes out in the world, no matter if it's a Chinese only device, whether it's a Taiwanese, whether it's a device that's only released in France for the French market. You're gonna bet your bottom dollar we're gonna review it. But at the same time, if it's only, it's going to receive less comments and less engagement if it's locked to a specific region and a specific language. But there's been, you know, with Chinese stuff, we know that a lot of people just don't find that interesting because there's not a lot of Chinese people that watch our you know, our videos and our review videos and things like that. So the average person's not going to find value in a Chinese e-reader that's only Chinese only. But suddenly there's been a concentrated movement of all these Chinese companies to branch outside of China and start selling their devices through distributors with English on them. And suddenly their newest devices are relevant and interesting to not only us but our audience, because it's the type of thing that they could buy, you know, whether it's like the new Harmony OS like thing by
that's okay.
By Huawei. But you know, bigger companies like Xiaomi now are starting to embrace English on their devices, which is like mind-blowing because every single one of their device for ebook readers was Chinese. Now it's English. So this is a story that's developing and I'm sort of working on because I find that this is very interesting. And no one's really disclosed why. Is it because we're actually talking to all these companies like on a daily or every couple of weeks and pitching the idea that, you know, you should run English because you know, right now you're only targeting the Chinese market, which is only a few, you know, like 1 billion people or whatever. But
but you change that little option to just, push a little tap on your plastic or glass screen. One little tap opens up billions of prospective clients. All you got to do, and that they've been doing it. It's just like, English, boop, English. You have just changed a lot. The amount of work you had to do will result in a lot more of a benefit and an advantage to you than what it costs for you to do a little translation script on your operating system skin. It changes everything. It really
totally,
does.
because they're all using Android, so it's like so easy to
it's so
to just
easy.
like unlock one of the typical standard Android like things that will change the UI and everything else to Android. It won't change, you know, if there's Chinese apps that are pre-installed on the device, those Chinese characters aren't going to be changed to English, you know, but you could just delete them all, you know, and just
delete them
and
all.
have like.
And another interesting thing about that is that if you look at the Ink Palm Gen 1, Chinese only, you look at the Ink Palm Gen 2, Chinese only, but there is languages and input. Click on it. Choose your language. Click on it. There's only Chinese now, but those options have never been there before, which means, and you know what? If I was a developer and I had like the very absolute raw code of it, it probably has visibly, you know, 110 language for me to choose on, but they're only allowing you to see one. But those options have never been there before, and that's why it's interesting that all these companies are now offering multiple languages. Even Storytel out of Sweden, they only had Swedish before. You couldn't change it if you tried. Now there's everything and their mom on there. I mean, there's like Farsi. There's I think Iranian is Farsi. There's like Swahili. You can do Spanish, Portuguese, anything you want.
Arab
on there. Arab. So like, there's a ton of languages, even on things that are like were once Swedish only, and like. Storytel is snuck under the radar. Out of nowhere, they're like, we have a 3rd-gen device. We're like, geez, what? Don't just drop that on me. We haven't heard from you in a coon's age. Like, why would you do that? So, yeah, man, like, seriously, like, you know, I'm not saying English is the best language in the world because we speak English, but not only is it our main demographic of listeners, but it's the most prominent language in the world. You can argue that all you want, but you don't go to Germany and there's like, you know, Indian characters written under the street signs. It's going to be English. Everything's going to be English. Changing your little tiny, already made for you Android operating system to choose English changes everything for your company.
Yeah. So I want to look into the reasons why all these, you know, typically Chinese e-readers that are sold in China, they're running Chinese. Now suddenly English is an option, and what's changed? What's prompted them to do that? That's the answer to that is what I want to write about, but I need to first talk to like all these companies and time zone differences and, you know, holidays and things like that. But you know, that's neither here nor there, but you can expect like a future discussion and a future article on our website at Goodreader.com like about that. So hopefully this new format with OBS and Peter talking to me via Skype, and that it all worked out at the end, but we could check out the VOD and see if there's anything we need to do. But a lot of the people, they said that they didn't have any problems. Audio loud and clear. Video is looking phenomenal.
Yeah, it's looking good.
So,
yeah, it's looking very good.
So if you want to see what Good e-Reader is doing on a daily, you can check out our Twitter and our Facebook links that are on your screen below. And you can follow us there for all of our social media things. We're trying to be more engaged with social media, so we're doing polls now on Good e-Reader on our Facebook page. We're doing polls like on our Twitter page. We're, you know, asking people. We're trying to be more engaged with like social media, at least like YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, which seem to be like our most popular and longest lived of like platforms. We've never really been on an Instagram or Pinterest, or we don't make TikToks or anything like that.
Yeah, no, we don't do any of that. That stuff doesn't fit our mold. Very professional of what we do, and you know, we could give someone an e-reader and it'll be that 10-minute video you see on Facebook, and it's like nothing happens until 9 minutes and 58 because they want ads to roll, and we can give someone an e-reader and push him down the stairs and he's like, oh, and we're like, radical, bro, and it's all filmed in portrait. But no, we have,
and it has like 110 million views.
Oh, dude, like 90 million views overnight, and then you get picked up by news outlets, and it's like, oh, trending viral, dude falls down staircase, breaks Kindle. It's like we have very serious connections with very big companies. We're the sole distributor of Sony products. Sony doesn't even sell Sony products, but we sell Sony products. You can understand the degree of how we have to keep up our professionalism. So we have fun, of course, but we're not going to be goofy slapstick comedians. It's not a good fit, and it doesn't fit with doing business with mega giants like Fujitsu and E INK and Onyx and all these companies around the world to be a bunch of goofballs. So we like to have fun, we like to show ourselves, but we have to remain professional and give you guys the best possible content and delivery of such as we possibly can.
All right, guys. So we're going to wrap it up for this edition of the Good Reader Radio Show. I think we've been going for like an hour and a half so far.
Yeah, a new test of the new format, but you guys don't have to watch the whole thing, and you obviously aren't, but it's totally fine.
Yeah, it's just Peter and I ranting and raving about different aspects of like the e-reader industry. But I think some of the discussion topics were like compelling, talking about the e-paper technologies of like yesteryear, talking about the Kaleido 3, what's happening with that. I can't talk about what companies are doing what with it because there's only a specific few that I don't want to talk about because everything was talked about off the record. So but we do know that later this year, like after summer, so like fall, winter, that's when we can expect consumer products using Kaleido 3 to appear. So we're not going to it's not going to pop up anytime between like now and the summer, although the technology will be announced then. But these companies they need enough lead time to evaluate the new technology, how they can take advantage of it with software and making the hardware for it. So that is like a 6-month process. For if me and Peter were to be able to decide to make an e-reader today, we wouldn't be able to actually have anything in our hands for like 6 months from now. Easy. Because it's like they got to make the screen, they got to do assembling, they got to source components, they got to do this, that, and the other thing, and to send 1,000 units to us, it's like it's going to take 6 months. So companies need lead time in order to like evaluate even just new technology, and to do that in the shortest amount of time. So that's it, guys. So thanks for watching the show. And Peter and I are going to be doing this once a month on the last Sunday of the month. So that's where you can see it. Right. But Peter does his weekly shows where we take a look at a lot of the newest devices that we've gotten in studio.
That's right.
He does polls asking people what they want to see us to talk about in depth on the channel. So if you want to see any of the shows or anything like that, so once a week on the main Good Reader YouTube channel under the live tag. So if you follow us and you click on the bell notification, you'll be automatically informed on when we go live or when we upload one of our many videos. So
that's right.
Keep your browsers locked to goodyreader.com and youtube.com/goodyreader for all of your daily fixes on the e-reader world. And you could be the person around the water cooler that everyone's listening to as you regale them with tales of the new Xiaomi and the new Huawei and the latest e-reader news. Everyone will be like, they'll be like taking a sip of their water and then they'll like spit it out like, what?
Did you say the Bigme X6? Oh man! Everybody come here!
It's like water cooler pizza party, everybody! Everyone starts cheering for you and clapping. So they're like, Peter!
Yeah, Bigme Pocket 7.